Okay, let's unpack this. We're taking a deep dive into a stack of material that explores a truly fascinating and, well, for many involved, a deeply contentious issue.
Yeah, it's all about the founding history of National Taiwan Normal University, or NTNU as most people know it.
And the sources we have here give us a direct look at this. We're pulling from excerpts of an online meeting, alumni, professors, supporters,
Yeah.
all gathered specifically to discuss this.
Right. And the core dispute, the question sparking all this debate, seems almost deceptively simple on the surface, doesn't it?
It really does. Is NTNU celebrating its 79th anniversary this year, or is it actually its 103rd? That's the fundamental question.
So, our mission in this deep dive is really to navigate the different perspectives laid out in these sources. We
Right.
want to understand the historical claims being made,
What basis they cite for those claims?
and critically, why this disagreement over dates matters so much to the people speaking out in these materials we've reviewed.
Absolutely. So let's start by looking at the history of NTNU as presented by, well, the viewpoint that's most prominent among the speakers in our source material.
Okay, so this narrative firmly holds that NTNU was founded by the Republic of China government, the ROC government, right after Taiwan's retrocession in 1945.
They trace its origins to an institution called the Taiwan Provincial Teachers Academy, established in 1946.
That's right. And the sources get quite specific with dates for this founding process. They mention it was approved in April 1946.
Right.
The preparatory committee meeting took place on May 17th, 1946.
Right.
And the official founding date, or the mandate date they point to, is June 5th, 1946. So 79 years ago from this year, if you count from June 46.
And its initial purpose, according to these speakers, was incredibly focused. It wasn't just any university. It was created explicitly to train secondary school teachers specifically for Taiwan at that time.
Yes, very specific mission.
Yeah.
And they trace its evolution from there. It became a provincial university in 1955 and then later elevated to a national university in 1967.
What really comes through in these sources, is how significant they see this specific period as being.
Mm-hmm.
They describe NTNU from this ROC era as the cradle of secondary education in Taiwan, an institution that trained countless elites.
They talk about a glorious history and establishing the university's unique subjectivity, its independent identity and significance rooted firmly in that ROC era. They see it as distinctly its own thing, founded then.
Okay, now this is where the alternative history claim comes into play, and it introduces the core conflict we're exploring.
Right. According to the sources, the current NTNU administration, led by President Wu Zhengji, has adopted a different view.
A view that links the university's history back much further, all the way to 1922.
1922, that's a big jump back.
It is. So what exactly does that 1922 date refer to, according to the speakers we're hearing from in these sources?
Okay, so that date, they explain, corresponds to the founding of the Japanese-era Taipei Higher School, an institution established during the period of Japanese colonial rule in Taiwan.
And importantly, the speakers describe this Japanese school not as a university in the way we think of it now, but specifically as a high school. IKEA, they emphasize.
Yes, and they also point out it was an affiliated school of Taihoku Imperial University.
Which is now National Taiwan University, NTU.
Exactly, NTU. And that Japanese school, the Taipei Higher School, it ceased operations completely when Japan surrendered in 1945. It just stopped existing.
So the heart of the dispute, then, lies in the arguments against linking NTNU's history to this 1922 Japanese-era institution. This is where the language in the sources gets really strong.
Oh, definitely. Speakers use terms like tampering, grafting, even falsification to describe this connection. They see it as fundamentally wrong.
And the core of their opposition rests on what they describe as a fundamental lack of continuity between these two institutions.
Yes, they emphasize repeatedly that the Japanese Taipei Higher School and the ROC-era Teachers Academy were completely different. Different in their fundamental nature, their explicit purposes.
Their curricula, their faculty, their whole educational systems. Just different beasts entirely in their view.
Totally different. And it's not just the institutional differences, is it? They also highlight the clear temporal gap as a critical point.
Right. The Japanese school ended in 1945.
And the new Teachers Academy began in 1946. For them, there was no direct continuation, no inheriting of the previous institution itself. It was, a clean break and a new beginning.
One specific detail that really drives this point home for them, and it's mentioned in the sources, is about the campus itself.
Yes, the location argument.
Exactly. They say the fact that the new ROC-era Teachers Academy ended up using the former Taipei Higher School campus starting in 1946 was purely practical.
Just about finding a suitable physical location, it had nothing in their view to do with adopting the previous school's identity or history.
And there's even an anecdote one speaker shared about the search for a campus back then.
Right, I remember reading that. They mentioned other potential sites were considered, like a match factory.
A match factory, or even a primary school. It really underscores their view of the campus choice as just finding a building that worked, not some profound historical link.
Exactly. So they argue the implications of claiming the 1922 date are actually quite significant and negative.
How so? What are the implications they worry about?
Well, they feel it suggests NTNU originated from a colonial institution, which they obviously dispute, and they even worry it implies the university might still be seen as somehow subordinate to NTU.
Ah, because the Japanese high school was subordinate to the Japanese Imperial University.
Precisely. They argue this move fundamentally blurs NTNU's distinct identity. It effectively denies its independent history and that subjectivity, that sense of self, which they feel was clearly established during the ROC era.
So if the speakers in these sources don't see this as a genuine historical reevaluation based on new evidence or something, what do they believe is the motivation behind this change to the founding date?
Well, from the speaker's perspective, as presented quite clearly in the sources, this change is fundamentally driven by political motives. That's their core assertion.
Okay.
They link this, using terms they employ, mind you, to a broader trend they describe as de-Sinicization.
Which they see as a lessening or downplaying of Chinese cultural or historical ties in Taiwan.
Right. And also pro-Japanization, which they perceive as an alleged move towards positively emphasizing Japanese influence or connections, sometimes at the expense of the ROC narrative.
And the alleged goal of this trend, as interpreted by these speakers, is to highlight the Japanese colonial period more positively while minimizing or even erasing ROC history and connections that they see as central to Taiwan's heritage.
Exactly. They mention examples that they feel demonstrate this wider trend, like perceived changes in history textbooks that they believe minimize ROC history or the anti-Japanese resistance,
Okay.
and even things like the commemoration of certain figures from the Japanese colonial period. These are the broader connections they're drawing.